On October 18, 1957, Raymond Snowden walked into the newly constructed gallows room. He was there to have his death sentence carried out. However, it did not go according to plan. The officers pulled the lever and the trapdoors underneath Snowden opened up. Snowden's neck didn't snap right away, as it was supposed to. This means that Snowden ended up hanging for around 15 minutes, struggling to breathe, while the family of his victim watched in horror. They say that paranormal activity occurs in places where extreme emotion, harm, and death have occurred. In Idaho, there's no better place than that, as in the Old Idaho Penitentiary. In the late 1800s, much of Idaho was still the Wild West. Many were lured here with the promise of gold. Settlements were established, but most were lawless and without order. If Idaho were to become part of the Union, it needed a prison. In 1870, construction began on a penitentiary. It started as a one-room jailhouse and quickly grew to house hundreds. Using local sandstone, prisoners were required to build their own accommodations as part of their penance. None could have known the unforgiving oppressiveness of sandstone that would become their nightmare. Sandstone holds temperature. It was unbearably hot in summer and relentlessly cold in winter. There was no indoor plumbing, and prisoners were forced to use a pot shared between them and only emptied once a day. It was within these walls that Raymond Snowden found himself after a fateful day in 1956. He had met a woman, Cora Dean, mother of two, at a bar. After she refused his advances, Snowden pulled out a pocket knife and proceeded to stab her 30 times. There are also reports that he severed her spinal cord, among other atrocities. He dumped her body and hailed a passerby who dropped him off at a bowling alley. There, he changed his clothes and later dumped the murder weapon in a sewer. A paperboy found Cora Dean's body the next day. But Raymond Snowden wasn't the only infamous prisoner to reside within these sandstone walls. Among them were Harry Orchard, who orchestrated the assassination of Idaho's governor, Frank Steunenberg, and Lyda Southward, who killed several of her husbands for insurance money. Out of necessity, a solitary confinement building was erected to deal with unruly prisoners. You did not want to be sent there. Called Siberia, these were 3 by 8 foot cells constructed of solid walls with no windows. Prisoners who were sent there were said to go insane after spending days on end with no contact. The prison did not discriminate. Women and children were said to have been among the population. A child as young as 10 was incarcerated for killing a man. He was given a sentence of 8 years for manslaughter, but was later pardoned by the governor. By the 1970s, prison conditions had not changed much. Riots erupted in 1971 and in 1973, the latter being more severe. Prisoners burned the chapel to the ground in protest of the heinous environment. On December 3rd of that year, the penitentiary was closed, and all prisoners were moved to a newly constructed prison south of Boise. In its 101 years of operation, it's said that at least 129 inmates died at the old pen. Almost immediately after it was closed, the Old Idaho Penitentiary was put on the historical sites list and is now run by the Idaho Historical Foundation as a museum of Idaho's past. It is one of only 4 territorial prisons still open to the public. Many people have reported paranormal events when visiting, including hearing gasping, thought to be Raymond Snowden's last breaths, as well as disembodied moans and feelings of cold in certain areas. Some have even reported being touched when no one is there. As for Raymond Snowden, some have said that his execution was purposely botched to inflict as much pain and suffering as possible. Before his execution, all hangings were performed in the courtyard. It was this newly constructed gallows where Snowden met his death. He was the first and last prisoner to ever be executed there. The old pen is open for visitation. Much of the prison was left exactly as it was the day of the 1973 riot. Walls are still burned out. Calendars hang from the walls. You can read the stories of many of the inmates as you walk through each eerie cell house. What led them to their disastrous fates? What was life like behind these sandstone walls? You can learn this and more. And maybe, just maybe, you too will encounter a ghostly presence yearning to leave the confines of the Old Idaho Penitentiary.